What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the first members episode of the 21 CD podcast. As always, I'm your ghost, John. Hey guys, if you're listening to this right now, you guys are supporting me financially, and that is awesome. So thank you very much for being here. Right now, there's only a few of us, and so we're going to keep this intimate. Some of these members episodes, I've been wanting to do things a little bit differently. I want to make them a little bit more like this, where we're kind of sitting down together and going over some stuff for the first time. So one of the interesting things that I've been doing lately that I haven't really been telling anybody about is looking up, going to places where I'm not really supposed to go on the internet and beyond, and finding some literature that appears to have been intentionally hidden, forgotten, locked away in congressional libraries, or written by Freemasons and kind of like suppressed a little bit. They're on the Wayback Machine. They're in the lost corridors of the internet, the dark web, places like that. And lately, what I've been studying, not just the Nephilim. Of course, you guys know that I've been studying the Nephilim a lot, but I'm starting to feel like it's getting really, really dark. And I want to open up this pit a little bit and get back to some of the fun stuff. But if you dwell too long on the Nephilim, they will, it just gets really, really heavy because, that's Satan, man. That's the devil. But so I've been researching the inner earth, guys, because as much as I'm fascinated with lost civilizations in North America specifically, especially the Anasazi, the narrative that is intentionally hiding the great cultures that were once here, I am equally as interested in where I believe some of them may have gone and or come from. And I'm referring to the inner earth, the hollow earth theory. And I've been on a hunt for literature that I haven't heard regarding this theory, and I found some crazy stuff. So we're gonna read this stuff for the first time together. I don't know what's in here, and I think this is what's gonna make this so fun. If you guys don't end up having a good time doing this with me, you guys are the customers, right? So, and you guys are also the first, so y'all are really helping me figure out what is fun and what is not. So let me know if you guys have a good time doing this. Please don't hesitate to talk to me personally and stuff. You can shoot me a message. I respond to everybody as fast as I can. If I don't respond, it's nothing personal, but please do, so we can have some discourse on whether or not you guys are having a good time with this kind of stuff. But let's get right into it. So cave and tunnel entrances of the United States, and this is compiled by a man named Alan Walton. B. Alan Walton. The following account comes from pages 7 through 10 of the July 1954 issue of Fate magazine. It says, nearly a year ago, workers of the Lion Coal Corps' Wadis mine of Wadis, Utah, broke into a network of tunnels, which appeared to be of great antiquity. These tunnels were old, in other words. According to A.B. Fowler, the vice president and general manager of the company, the miners were advancing down the center of a 3,000-foot peninsula branching off from the mountain where the mine is located. Okay, so a peninsula. Okay, all right. They were working an 8-foot coal seam at 8,500 feet. Okay. As they moved down the peninsula, the miners ran into pockets of coal that had oxidized to the point that it could almost be scooped off the face with bare hands. They encountered larger and larger pockets of this lifeless coal until at last they hit 2 tunnels about 200 feet apart. In May 1953, both the tunnels appeared to be between 5 and 6 feet in height and width. Because of moisture, the coal between the 2 tunnels had deteriorated to the point where it was no longer merchantable. They couldn't sell it. Several of the miners crawling down these old drifts a short distance found that the tunnels were about half full of slack coal. Rooms had been mined off from either side of the tunnels. By the testimony of the mining engineers, they were of such great antiquity that the coal had weathered to uselessness for any kind of burning or heat. By the testimony of the miners, they were not only tunnels, but coal mining rooms as well. By our conclusion, therefore, the tunnels were dug by an ancient race which used the coal for some purpose. It is no answer to say that we can't be sure because we don't know what the Indians in this area used coal. The fact remains, here are ancient mines. They were dug by someone, if not the Indians, by someone else. Certainly by someone who preceded the white man to this area, possibly by someone who preceded the Indians. Dang, that's the kind of stuff I like right there. That's that good stuff. So these stories, man, when we start talking about where these stories come from and the validity of these stories, I understand it's tough, right? Anybody can say anything and write it into a letter and then wait for decades to go by, you know, and it just kind of like, it just adds to the collection of internet stories, right? And it may or may not be true. That's just part of it, to be honest. That's just part of it. But what's interesting is that this has a very specific location. And a lot of the details seem to be very specific in a way that I wouldn't know how to write. So if somebody faked this, it must have been a miner of some kind. Somebody who mined coal and knows how to talk about it. But I'm inclined to believe stuff like this. And I'm inclined to believe that some of these things, if they were properly investigated, might prove to be more true than not. The way that these stories end up getting out is somebody experiences something, somebody normal who doesn't normally look for this kind of stuff, isn't intrigued by this kind of stuff, they happen upon something insane, like this, right? And then what ends up happening is they forget about it. They tell a couple friends, they forget about it, but then something else weird happens and they remember this moment, and then they have to tell somebody about it because now they're starting to think that something weird might be actually going on. In this case, the weird thing is that these mines were clearly probably not dug by the native Indian tribes. How could they get that deep and mine coal? We've never even heard of such a thing. Right? They didn't have coal mining operations. They weren't down deep inside the earth with mining tools, scraping out coal from the inside. There's no way, unless the Indians were something that we're not allowed to believe that they were, unless they were more advanced than they seem. Or there was a different advanced race that was here as well. And maybe the natives knew about them, maybe they didn't. Like this guy said, maybe they came before. But what is interesting is that they are there, and there is something that came before the natives, and at least the white man in this area, and dug these coal mines deep inside the earth in Utah. That's pretty crazy. The following letter appeared on pages 174 and 175 of the October 1947 issue of Amazing Stories. Sirs, perhaps I have delayed over long to send you my slight contribution to the master code. Why? I was still afraid there might be some slip that would put me in a bad spot. I am a druggist in this town, and any trace of nuts talk would ruin my job. I have been waiting for the issue, which just hit the newsstand, and agree with you completely. There is in this area an artifact, which seems to prove all you have printed about the cavern dwellers. First, I want to ask a question. How are the caverns ventilated? There is no vegetation to purify the air in the caves. Therefore, there must be some connection with the surface. I know where one of the air shafts reached the surface. My grandfather was raised with the Indians in this section of the country and has told me of the stories he heard when he was a child. The Indians describe the Wind Cave, as it is called around here, as the home of the devils who came forth in the dead of the night to steal their women and food. Sounds a lot like Nephilim. No Indian will venture within the area inside of 5 miles of the cave. Perhaps a description of the inside will make my meaning more clear. The entrance is just a hole in the rocks, but After getting inside, you come into a 4-square tunnel about 3.5 feet square with a 6-inch gutter along the west side. About 10 inches deep, this tunnel is intact for about 100 yards and then opens into what looks like it might have been at one time a completely round or half-round passageway, which now looks like the solid lava which it goes through has been chipped and crumbled by extreme heat. It is possible to travel for about a half mile inside before the tunnel becomes obstructed too much for a man to get through. I have been trying to get someone who would help me clear this obstruction enough to get through, and several have agreed, but when we get there and start to work, they soon give up and want to get out. Another funny thing is that every time I go back, the work done before does not show, yet there is no evidence of fresh falls of rock from the ceiling. At this point, the feeling that you're in mortal danger becomes almost overpowering. After battling this feeling for an hour, I feel as weak as if I had been sick for weeks, and I have made this attempt many times. The opening has been dynamited at least 4 times that I know of, supposedly to kill rattlesnakes, yet I have never seen one either in the mouth of the cave or inside. In fact, my experience with snakes leads me to believe they would never brave the cold blast that comes out. Still, the feelings of distrust and fear clings, and none of the natives will consider exploring this artifact, which could be made the biggest tourist so much spit in my mouth because these sentences are super duper long. Still, the feelings of distrust and fear clings, and none of the natives will consider exploring this artifact, which could be made the biggest tourist attraction in this part of the state if people were just not afraid to go down there. I'm willing to discuss what I know with anyone who won't believe I am crazy and would like to find someone who has the intestinal fortitude to help me clear the obstruction to the major cavern with which it connects, which I know extends to a deep of 30,000 feet below because it has been drilled into and that much cable let out without hitting anything to drill in, and I will show anyone who is interested the entire setup. This dude is serious. This dude is not lying, or at least believes like himself. He's very confident. My grandfather is now dead, he says, unfortunately, so he can not verify the Indian stories mentioned. But if Mr. L. Taylor Hansen is as familiar with Indian legends, we get a call out here, as he claims, and really desires the truth, have him work with the Shoshones and the Blackfeet. Consider their tales of the demons who work this countryside. Again, Nephilim. Also, investigate the story of the 3 immortals who have been seen by many to rescue them from a lethal situation. What does that mean? That is very specific. Now you have this idea like, okay, even if you are making this up, Mr. Whoever you are, that's something he believes in for sure. Like that's when you're reading a story and you find stuff like that, that's, even if he made everything else up, he called this dude out for that thing specifically, which I find fascinating. Also, investigate the story of the 3 immortals who have been seen by many to rescue them from a lethal situation. What does that mean? The letter goes on, write me if you are interested in these legends, and any knowledge I have is yours. Oh, here we go. George Haycock. Thriftway Drug, Maine and Overland, Burley, Idaho. Okay, so here's what we're going to do. We're going to find out if this guy even existed. George Haycock. Who the heck are you? All right, let's see what we got. Okay, the name George Haycock is associated with several individuals throughout history here. And we do have a George William Haycock, born in Idaho in 1925. He died in 99. Wow. Well, that's probably him. That's pretty specific. Our boy was alive during this time, the writer of this letter. He was in Idaho. Let's see if we can get a closer look, see if he was in Burley. This is how you do it, folks. This is how you verify. This is how you vet. You guys are getting a little inside look. Yep, sure enough. We got birth certificates or whatever and everything. Yep, this dude is legit. That guy's real. He actually wrote that with his real name. There's another letter. It appeared later in the January 1948 issue. It says, "Sirs, if you file your correspondence, you will find a letter there from this writer which was written in the early part of this year, advising you of reading my first Amazing Stories magazine and of my interest in the mystery of the caves, especially the articles by Mr. Shaver. I haven't missed a copy of AS since then, and interest in the mystery of the caves has grown until you may class me as an unofficial member of the Cave Hunters Mutual Benefit Society." Okay. In fact, the purpose of this letter is to inform you of a recent expedition to one of the caves for an investigation. Okay, so somebody read about these caves that Mr. Haycock, George Haycock, put out there that we just read, and they got interested, and they went and looked at it, allegedly, and now they're writing a letter to this same magazine saying, we went there, and this is... Are they going to tell us? Here we go. For you and those interested in the air shaft near Burley, Idaho, reported by Mr. George Haycock, whose letter was published in the October issue of this magazine, this is to verify the truth of this cave. Holy smokes. Master Sergeant Brentlinger, who's a Shaver fan, stationed at Hillfield, Utah, and myself made a trip to Burley over the weekend of the 17th of August to ascertain the authenticity of both Mr. Haycock and the cave. Okay, they're going to see if he's real, and they're going to see if this cave's real. We had no trouble locating this gentleman, and after explaining the purpose of our mission, he quite readily agreed to show us the cave and to guide us through, providing it was still possible to enter. Okay, so the entrance had been blasted since he was last in the cave, he explained. So we drove about 6 miles west of town, then turned off the highway onto a little road leading off into the desert sagebrush. Oddly enough, this road was well worn and seemed to be much used, although there was no apparent reason for so much traffic. We failed to see any other cars either on the way in or out, even though he had been in the cave many times, and to the entrance as recently as 3 days prior to this trip, Mr. Haycock strangely had difficulty in locating the spot, and we stopped twice to look before we finally found it about a mile from the highway. You can tell he's kind of salty about that. Oh, well, Mr. Haycock didn't find it right away, so we had to stop twice to look before we finally found it. You can tell he didn't like that. That must have been a very frustrating moment for him out there in the evening looking for this cave. The entrance was located in the center of a shallow circular depression. The surrounding terrain was nothing but sand and sagebrush, but jammed in about the opening were several large boulders. We found there was still a small hole running down through the boulders, and Mr. Haycock thought it was possible for us to make entrance. With some violent maneuvering, we did manage to squeeze through, and we followed Mr. Haycock to the floor of the cavern. Then, crawling, kneeling, and sometimes walking, we were led back through the cave for approximately 1/4 of a mile. The cavern is cut through what appears to be lava rock. Walls and ceilings are badly fallen in many places, but there is enough intact yet to give the general appearance that the cave was at one time square. In certain spots, the walls and ceiling are perfectly flat. Then too, we noticed one small chamber to one side of the main passage that is square cut, except for one end which is cupped out. There are numerous small passages leading off to the side of the main path, which Mr. Haycock said led to dead ends in the ones that he had explored. After seeing enough to convince us of the truth of Mr. Haycock's story, it was decided to turn back and not to continue inward to the impassable obstruction that Mr. Haycock mentioned in his letter. To have gone that far, more equipment would have been required. We had nothing but 2 flashlights, both being used continuously. Where we turned back is approximately halfway to the obstruction. We failed to hear or feel the icy wind that is said to blow from the shaft most of the time. However, Mr. Haycock explained that it did become quiet occasionally as we found it that day. At present, another trip is planned to the cave. This time there will be 7 or 8 of us, and we plan to take the proper equipment and enough provisions to do some serious work at clearing away the obstruction. It is desired by all to learn what, if anything, might lie further on beyond this obstruction. But if there is nothing more, but more cave, it will at least be enjoyed and remembered by all. Okay, so now for the information of 2 other caves that this writer knows of, which might also merit investigation. The first is in the Smoky Mountains of North Carolina in the Nantahala Gorge. It is called the Blowing Springs and is easily reached from the highway. The cave has an icy blast of air and a cold stream flowing from it continuously, from which it got its name. It is not known by the writer whether anyone has entered this cave or if this is possible, but there are many who have been to the entrance to look in. The second is called the Devil's Well and is located in the hole in the ground near Pine City, Washington. The cave is very round and approximately 5 feet in diameter. People are known to be afraid to enter this cave due to the rumor that it is a rattlesnake den. It would be interesting to learn if there is any truth to the rattlesnakes and why it is named the Devil's Well and by whom. Yes, that is some cool stuff. That is some interesting stuff. So we have some actual locations that theoretically we could investigate. These places are all named, and a lot of these places have landmarks close to them that might help us find these supposed entrances to the Middle Earth. I mean, that guy was pretty confident. Haycock was pretty confident that this cavern was 30,000 feet deep. That's nuts. Like, that's insanely deep. We have accounts all over the place of entire cities being underground. There's even a conspiracy about that even our own country, North America, like our elites have just built so much infrastructure underground that we have no idea about. It's really quite crazy that we have no clue what's going on underneath our feet at any given time. They're always making us look up, but they're never they're trying to keep us from wondering what's inside, right? It's just a core. You just keep going. You're just going to get to the core of the earth. It's super hot. That's it. Nah, there's nothing down there. Don't even worry about it. Don't even worry about it. Let's move on. I'm kind of interested to see what else we got here. Mount Shasta. Oh, this is interesting. This is okay. So Mount Shasta, this is interesting. I'm just saying that because every time Mount Shasta comes up, it's something crazy. I got to get out there, man. I got to get out to Mount Shasta and see what's going on out there. Let's read this story. Mount Shasta in the northernmost part of California has been a center of mystery for many students of metaphysics. The mountain is an extinct volcano and is the source of several Indian legends in the area. The following account can be found on pages 257 and 258 of A Dweller on Two Planets by Philos, the Tibetan. A similar account can be found in An Earth Dweller's Return by the same. Beside a roaring, dashing mountain torrent, falling in myriad cascades of foam white as the drifted snow, interspersed with pools of quiet water, deep, trout-filled, blue, reflecting flowery banks and towering pine-crested ridges, ribs of the planet. We pause. The day is hot, but the waters of the branch of McCloud River are cold as the pristine snows of Shasta from which they flow to our feet and thence away. We recline on the brink of a deep blue crystal pool. idly casting pebbles into and shivering the image of a tall basalt cliff reflected from the mirror calm surface. What secrets perchance are about us we do not know as we lie there, our bodies resting, our souls filled with peace. Nor do we know until many years are passed out through the back door of time that this tall basalt cliff conceals a doorway. We do not suspect this, nor that a long tunnel stretches away, far into the interior of majestic Shasta. Wholly unthought is it that there lie at the tunnel's far end vast apartments, the home of the mystic brotherhood, whose occult arts hollowed that tunnel and mysterious dwelling. Sock, the name is. Are you incredulous as to these things? Go there, or suffer yourself to be taken as I was once. See as I saw, not with the vision of flesh. The walls polished as by jewelers, though excavated as by giants. Floors carpeted with long, fleecy gray fabric that looked like fur, but was a mineral product. Ledges intersected by the builders, and in their wonderful polish exhibiting veinings of gold, of silver, of green copper ores, and maculations of precious stones. Verily a mystic temple, made afar from the madding crowd, a refuge whereof those who, seeing, see not, can truly say, and no man knows, and no man saw it e'er. Once I was there, friend, casting pebbles in the stream's deep pools, yet it was then hid, for only a few are privileged, and departing the spot was forgotten, and today, unable as anyone who reads this, I cannot tell its place. Curiosity will never unlock that secret. Does it truly exist? Seek and ye shall find, knock and it shall be opened unto you. Shasta is the true guardian and silently towers, giving no sign of what is within his breast. But there is a key. The one who first conquers self, Shasta will not deny. The complete account of his stay in the interior of Mount Shasta later on in his life can be found in the book, but due to its length, it cannot be reproduced here. Yeah, man, I've heard some crazy stuff about Shasta, and to be honest, this account, though fanciful as it is and though poetic as it is, it checks out with a lot of what I've read about Shasta. I'm really interested to see who this guy is, so let's look him up. Philos the Tibetan. Let's see what's going on with this guy and see who the heck he is. Who is Philos the Tibetan? Let's see what we got here. So this guy, holy cow. Oh, this is crazy. I'm just gonna read this to you guys. A Dweller on Two Planets. That's the book he wrote. And that's the excerpt that we read from that book. It's a spiritual and metaphysical book authored by Frederick Spencer Oliver, not Philos, and published in 1894. Oliver claimed to have transcribed the book through automatic writing, channeling a spirit named Philos the Tibetan. It has become a significant work in the esoteric and New Age communities, with its influence extending into topics like Atlantis, reincarnation, and spiritual evolution. That is nuts. This book later inspired many metaphysical works and movements. Oh man, Philos the Tibetan is a demon, bro. You know, I've heard of these spiral cults on Shasta. I've seen that stuff. It's crazy. This Philos guy who's writing this stuff through this vessel, that sounds like demon stuff right there, man. I'd be careful if I was this Mr. what does he call himself? What's his name? This Mr. Frederick Spencer Oliver. Let's see what else he's got. Let's see what else he did. Who is this guy? Who's Frederick Spencer Oliver, the guy who can channel demons? He was born in California, near Mount Shasta, in 1866. Poor growing up, pretty much. He said he began channeling this book at age 18, described the process as involuntary, with his hand writing messages dictated by a spirit named Philos. The book was completed in 1886, but wasn't even published until 1894, a few years before Oliver's death. That is wild. So, do you see how awesome this is? So, like, we're reading these texts. Who knows when this was read last? I don't know who's digging around in the dark looking for this type of stuff. But like this story, we're looking for entrances to the inner earth, right? We're reading about the inner earth, and there's so many accounts of these demons who work the land. This Philos, the Tibetan, who can be channeled through this guy who, you know, unites this sort of occult following around Mount Shasta. We have all of these, you know, we have the three immortals who rescue from a lethal situation. It's just like, wow, like you just look at the inner earth and you get Nephilim, and you get demons, which we believe is the disembodied spirits of Nephilim, right? Like you just get all of this stuff when you start looking at, and that's why, like, when some people are like, why do you always focus on the Nephilim so much, or whatever? It's not that I focus on them, it's just that they pop up everywhere. Like they're constantly popping up, and all of this research all points to this demonic Nephilim witch work. And yeah, man, you can't really escape it. But listen, guys, let me know if you guys thought this was fun. I had a great time making this episode and reading some of this stuff. I have thousands of stories just like these that I've just never read, and they're just sitting on my computer because I farm this content day in and day out. And oh man, I've gone completely insane from this kind of stuff. My reality is like, I don't know, man. I don't even know what's real half the time anymore. But yeah, so let me know what you guys think. Thanks for hanging out with me. Thanks for being my OGs. And I'll talk to you guys very soon. Bless.